Oh, I didn't hear you come in. Nice to see you. Good evening. What's that you say? Erotic bedtime stories? Why, I'd never. But I suppose I could. Alfred? Thank you. Want me to set the mood? I'll read a collection from my favorite, Enchanted Again. An excerpt, page 35. Pansy's spine arched reflexively while Jack's hand gently prodded her forward, and a shudder crept menacingly along the length of it. She stepped timidly into the room ahead of him, oddly mindful of her surroundings, or her actions, or the events that were unfolding around her. She seemed more in a dream than real life, as detached from the events as a figurine in a game of chess. For the moment, at least, she felt more like a spectator than a participant. The instant that Jack shut the door behind them, however, Pansy suddenly snapped out of her dream state and came fully alert. And even the air all around her seemed to crackle with life. Jack, too, abandoned his cool demeanor and was seized with a violent passion, grasping a fistful of Pansy's hair and jerking it.
Sir, cigar?
Not tonight, Alfred. Thank you. Where was I? Jerking her head around so that her face was directly beneath his, with her lips parted for his approaching kiss. Pansy awoke to an explosion of sensation, and she clung to Jack frantically as he captured her lips in an all-consuming kiss that devoured the last of her reserve. She pressed her body against his with a sigh, causing him to kiss her even more passionately. His hands began moving deliberately over her clothing, finding buttons and zippers and clasps, as he expertly removed every stitch without ever interrupting their kiss. Pansy was stripped to the skin before she even realized what Jack was doing. And though she normally had reservations about having her body so utterly exposed, Jack's unyielding, take-charge manner left her with no time for objections, neither uttered nor imagined. For that matter, and no choice but simply to enjoy the wonderfully vulnerable sensation of simply submitting to another's pleasure. Pansy felt a slow, languid tightening in her womb that pulsated outward, causing the flesh between her legs to tingle and swell and moisten. Once her clothes were removed, Jack took hold of Pansy's hair again and gently pushed her head down toward the floor. She twisted awkwardly at the waist at first, but then bent her legs and moved on to her knees, supposing that he wanted her to take him in her mouth. But he kept pushing down even farther, until her elbows too rested on the floor. With a mixture of apprehension and delight, she succumbed to the position and waited breathlessly for what he would do next. She was keenly aware of the dirty hotel room floor where she waited on knees and elbows, but it only seemed to accentuate the moment, making it all the more thrilling, as she had only the briefest of seconds to consider any of this before she heard a long swooshing sound from behind her, where Jack stood. Even as her mind was registering the sound of his belt sliding from his hoops, Jack swung it around with a vigor and landed it with a thud, resounding crack across the underside of her buttocks. The sound rattled her eardrums with a peculiar ring before the sting of the blow struck her consciousness. There's a subsequent volley of lashes that followed, some 4 or 5 at least, before she managed to cry out. She was stunned by how much the blow smarted, and all of her desire of just seconds before seemed to freeze in that instant. She made an effort to get up, and that, boys and girls, is where we end tonight. Good evening.